Welcome to Hope in the Face of Cancer, where we share real stories of courageous people and their cancer journey. In today's episode, we are honored to have Val Brock, a prostate cancer survivor who turned his cancer journey into a passion for giving back. First as a CanCare survivor volunteer, then committee member, and ultimately as chairman of the board for CanCare. We know his story will be a great inspiration for you. Val, thank you so much for joining us today for our Hope in the Face of Cancer podcast.
Absolutely, Darcie. It's my true pleasure to be here.
Well, we have been on quite the journey together for the last couple of years, and I can't wait to share. Yes, it's been fun and challenging for sure. I can't wait to dive into that for our listeners, but really want for their benefit to really start at the beginning with the time that you really heard those words, "You have cancer." So tell us a little bit about the beginning of your cancer journey.
Sure. Well, I'm a prostate cancer survivor, and my journey started about 2010, where I was on an overseas assignment with Shell, and came back to the U.S., and I took my annual physical, as people do on that trip home. And the doctor said, "Hey, well, you've got a little bit of an elevated PSA.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something we need to be thinking about, which would indicate prostate cancer, potentially." And we talked through what next steps might be. And it was at a relatively low level, just over kind of what they see as a threshold. And so my choice at the time was, let's wait and monitor. And, I talked with my wife and family about that decision, and we felt like the risk was pretty low. And so I did 6 months. Every time I come back to the U.S., we did a PSA. And then upon repatriating in about late 2013, my PSA took a jump. And so it was time to go a little deeper. And the urologist said, well, the next step is to get a biopsy, and we'll confirm that it is prostate cancer that's causing this, and then we'll decide next steps from there. And so took the biopsy and came back to the doctor's office in February, and the doctor said, yep, well, of the samples we took, about a quarter of them had cancer cells and of moderately aggressive nature. And so, it's time to think about treatment options.
Yeah.
And so as those of you in the audience or have had friends, prostate cancer, when you start thinking about treatment options, one thing, the key thing is to treat it early before the cancer gets out of the prostate itself, because then bones and other organs, and that can lead to a shorter life. You don't want that.
No.
So treatment comes down to the biggest fear that men have when they talk about prostate cancer is incontinence and erectile dysfunction. And that has kind of an overlay in how you think about what treatment options and what the risks are, both for removing of the cancer and as well for, what implication does it have for your quality of life going forward. So after much debate and talking with friends and the wife and family, decided to have surgery. And there was at the time, a fairly new kind of surgery, robotic surgery, kind of like arthroscopic, which much less invasive. And I actually changed doctors to one of the specialists in Houston that does that sort of surgery, and scheduled a date. And we had another kind of decision point there, is we had a trip plan, planned trip. And I decided to wait a couple months and put off the surgery until after we got back from the trip. That, the daughters were not very happy.
I'm sure that was nerve-wracking for them.
Yeah, and for me, honestly.
Yeah.
But, and that's, often the biggest challenges that I've faced in my cancer journey is just the wait.
Yeah.
The wait to know if, is my PSA going to go up? The wait to find the results of biopsies, the wait to get treatment, and then post-treatment, it's the wait to, okay, it's coming back. How's it going? But the surgery was very successful in July of 2014. Went well.
Coming up on a big anniversary then.
Yeah, exactly. 10 years. 10 years next month. Good catch.
Wow. Yeah. So, you talk about the wait, and I can imagine that our listeners who have faced any kind of cancer diagnosis can really relate to that weight. And yours was magnified because, you know, you got the test results, you went back overseas, you came back, got test results, went back overseas. I mean, how did you cope in that period of time, just knowing, having that kind of hang over you?
Yeah. Well, phases there, you know, I guess like many of us do, you tend to kind of compartmentalize things like that
Yeah.
and put them aside and try not to think about them. But, you know, as I really got into the more intensive period of time where I was getting biopsy results, what really helped was having a network to
Yeah.
talk to and reach out. And that's really where I got introduced to CanCare. Well, I take that back. My first introduction to CanCare, I'll come back to my cancer
Yeah.
journey. My first introduction to CanCare was probably 7 or 8 years before that. I had a good friend that was on the CanCare board and invited me to an event that CanCare was hosting. And so I got introduced to CanCare and became a donor before anything else.
Thank you.
But my second introduction to CanCare was perhaps even more meaningful. It was one of my friends happened to also be a CanCare volunteer, Stuart. And yeah, Stuart reached out to me when he heard that I had prostate cancer, and he really became that survivor by my side. He had been exactly where I was. He knew what I was thinking and feeling, and he was able to share his experience and listen to where I was, and really just be somebody that I could be fully directly and open with about, you know, what my choices were and what implications of what might happen next, kind of a thing. So it was immensely impactful for me.
For those who may be listening who, you know, are hearing this term, a survivor by your side, maybe for the first time, give us a little bit more color around that relationship. I mean, the kinds of things that you were able to maybe talk to with Stuart, or the kind of support that he was able to give you that maybe nobody else in your life could give.
Yeah. Survivorship, it really is about, it's an outlook on life, at least in the way I think about it. It is having a little bit of a view of the future and hope about what things can be, and deciding to fight. And so, no, deciding to fight wasn't ever a real challenge, but in that fight, it is, you know, what's going to be around the next corner, and it's the known unknowns, but then the unknowns also that are kind of out there that are the, you know, some of the things that make the cancer journey even more challenging. And so Stuart, as you know, well down his cancer journey, he had been there and was just able to share with me, not only me, my wife, you know, cancer doesn't just affect that one person, it affects those around him as well, particularly the family. And so he was able to develop a relationship with her as well. So a lot of what CanCare does is support to the cancer patient themselves, but caregivers are impacted as well. And Stuart did both. He was able to talk to my wife. And
He
really
pulled double duty.
He did. He certainly did.
Well, that's really important because, you know, oftentimes the caregiver's experience can kind of be overlooked in the cancer journey, and sometimes it can be even harder on the caregiver because they're pouring out their love and support for their loved one and suppressing whatever they're feeling to give their loved one hope. And so we're so honored to be able to support those caregivers as well by pairing them up with another caregiver who really understands what it's like, and they can be totally honest. It's a, you know, confidential, safe space for them, you know, to talk about what they're going through.
Absolutely. My wife was a, you know, fantastic supporter, but she needed support too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, Stuart was able to do that.
So at what point did you kind of decide to give back? You know, you really have turned your cancer journey into a mission to provide hope and support to others facing what you faced. So tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Sure. Well, it was sort of a calling. I think for many that face cancer, there's a time of really deep reflection on what's happening, why, reflective on life. What do I want to do with my remaining time, whatever that may be. And so it was a really time to reprioritize and reflect on life and take inventory of how I want to live my life. I had a friend tell me early on that, find the gift in this, which I thought was just an absurd thing to say to somebody, but they were a cancer survivor. And sure enough, that gift is exactly what I'm talking about. There is a time of crisis there where you can take inventory and decide what's important and reprioritize things in my life, particularly relationships, family and friends. But it also was about purpose.
Yeah.
And purpose opportunity right here is to make a positive impact on people's lives. And that is my giving back, is being able to share the impact that CanCare had on my life and try to bring that opportunity to anyone facing cancer.
So tell us a little bit about that volunteer journey, kind of how it started out and what role that you played, because I think that could be something in other people's minds of like, well, how could I give back? What does that look like? So tell us about that evolution of your volunteer experience.
Sure. Well, having had my experience with Stuart, post-surgery, we did the usual follow-up, PSA testing and all that. And, for a year or so, it was all good, looking great. And I felt like, well, I'm through the worst of it, maybe. There'll still be, careful watch over the coming years, but it was time to call CanCare and raise my hand and say, this is anything I want to be a part of it. So I did. And this was in 2015, I guess, and went through the training. CanCare training is just amazing. It is it's an experiential training, because so much of it's not a book learning thing. This is about how do you relate to and support somebody on their cancer journey using the experience that you've had. And so it's a very deep kind of listening and other skills that are very experiential. So that training was fantastic, and it kind of set me up for what's the next step of, okay, I'm ready for my first match now. And really being able to make a connection with people and share what I'd been and hear where they went.
As you think back on that time and starting to support others who had the same experience you did, any particular stories that really stand out to you, or moments that you were particularly moved by?
It's always moving, I think, when you make a deep connection with somebody. And I'll grant you that it's not 100% every match that you really go deep. Some people just want a conversation or two, hear a little bit, and then they feel better and want to go off their own thing. But there are many times that you get much, much deeper. And, that's not a common thing. But cancer will take you there. And so I've had a few longer term relationships that weren't just about cancer. You became friends. So there was a cancer patient that was in California that I was matched with. He was an Army sergeant and living his life there. And for him, it was a real crisis. On so many fronts. And he was fairly distraught about why was this happening to him, and I've been strong all my life, and how can this happen? And so we worked through all that and got to a point where he went through his treatment. He had surgery and got on the other side of it, and things were looking good. But we kept our relationship going, just talking about life. And Then one day he called and said, "Look, I'm done. I'm decided I'm going to retire from the Army and move back home to South Carolina with my wife and start a new life there. And by the way, I'm going to be traveling through Houston."
Oh, you got to meet him in person?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
that's awesome. Well, I know you've impacted so many lives through that one-on-one relationship role that you've played with CanCare, and then really your roles evolved over time, joining the board and serving on committees, and then there was a big turning point a couple of years ago where you stepped up to chair the boards. Tell us a little bit about um, what led you to say yes to that, and maybe about a little bit about your experience as chairman of the board.
yeah. Well, I could see the potential. CanCare's mission is just incredible. It
Mhm.
really is, and I'm all in. And when you're presented with this kind of an organization, all I could think about is why can't we do more?
Yeah.
Why can't we impact more lives? What would it take? What would it take to do more? And so we had a great board. We have a great board, great staff, and uh, miraculously, as I was moving into my chair elect role, we had the opportunity to hire a new CEO, and that was you. So as all that confluence of opportunity to really create something even better, even more impactful than what was already in place, partnering with the new CEO, working through strategy on how to achieve growth in a good way, and how to do more of what CanCare does so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm certainly so grateful for the partnership that we've had over the last few
Absolutely.
years. And I'm curious now that you passed the torch to a new chair, as you kind of reflect back on your time as chair of the board. I mean, what are you most proud of?
Um, Hiring you,
I'll take it.
but I think it's making it through COVID
Yeah.
in a way that really set us on a new course, and a deep strategic review coming out on the other side of COVID about what do we learn through that process and how can we build on that to impact more lives in what everybody went to on COVID is what we're doing right now. It's
Yeah.
a virtual conversations. And what we learned is we can be extremely effective in providing emotional support in many different communication vehicles. And that became the pathway to growth and impacting more lives. And to achieve that, we needed a bit of a technology transformation as well. And that's really the underpinning of a lot of strategic components is how do we grow efficiently and effectively in a way to create a bigger future for CanCare.
You talked about the gift of cancer, and sometimes I look back on that time and look at the gift of COVID as counterintuitive, I think, as that often is. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
When we're 34 years old as an organization, and when you do the same thing the same way for 30 years, I think you assume that that's the only way it can be done. And so I think COVID really stretched us all into thinking about what was possible, and what a blessing that is. That now, we're able to reach cancer patients and their families in all 50 states, and, have volunteers in 28 states. I don't know that if you rewound the clock 4 years, we could have fathomed, that we would be here. So I know I'm so grateful for your visionary leadership and looking at the possible, and being willing to, take chances, because at the end of the day, we all hunger for being able to serve more people and being able to give
absolutely.
that gift of a survivor by your side to anyone out there who needs and wants it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So any big challenges, that you look back on in the last couple of years that you reflect on and now looking at in the rear view mirror?
I think, the challenges are how to grow effectively and lead an organization through that change process. Change is always a challenging thing.
Yeah.
And it's a people thing.
Yeah.
So a transformation journey is also a journey of change, and just being sure that we charted a course, a path that still created raving fans in our volunteers, that they were supported and intrinsically rewarded by being able to support others going through cancer, for our clients to receive the quality of support that they want and empower them to be a part of that process. And for all our donors and everybody else too, if we're going to evolve, we've got to bring everybody along with us so that we're, ever more powerful on the journey. We're still working through that.
Yeah.
It's still a process.
The journey. Yeah. That's right. It's a journey for sure. So you have served as a volunteer, as a committee member, board member, but also a donor. Would love to, understand from your perspective, what that means to you and the why behind, why you give your time and talent, but also your treasure, to ensuring that anyone can have a survivor by their side.
Sure. Well, as with any nonprofit, donations are the lifeblood of the organization, right? And so if you think about it, as I've been kind of explaining, I consider CanCare's mission to be my own personal mission as well. And so why not? I mean, as a volunteer in the organization, as a leader in the organization, I can't just be talking the talk about what we do and why it's so important for charitable giving to CanCare. I want to walk the walk of I'm a leader that believes in it, and I can see the future. It's so wonderful, and the resources of all kinds, time, talent, and treasure, is what will create that future.
Yeah. Well, your passion for the cause is so evident, and one of the ways it's evident in that, as you stepped out of your role as chairman, you're not stepping away. You're so committed to the future state, the strategy, and really realizing this vision that we touch more lives. So tell us, what are you most excited about the future for CanCare and the ability for us to provide a survivor by the side of anyone facing cancer?
Well, the vision, of course, is that no one faces cancer alone. And that's, oh, wow, no one.
Yeah.
That can, if you think about it, that can be a most daunting thing, but it's a compelling one too, because it's a huge impact for people. And if we can get to a point where we are a national leader and cancer-related emotional support, we can do so much more in that kind of state. So that's what I see for our future, is being able to continue our progress toward that vision of nobody faces cancer alone, and doing that on a national stage. So it's really exciting for me to see that.
Yeah, it's very exciting for me too. And we can't do it alone. I mean, no one organization is going to fulfill that vision of not facing cancer alone. And that's why we've got to surround ourselves with, with partners and supporters and donors and volunteers in order to make that happen. So how has not only your cancer journey, but also your experience with CanCare and, your leadership in this organization changed, your outlook on life?
I think, there is this intrinsic reward thing where getting deep and being able to connect with people on a whole different level is life-changing. It truly is. It opens up, when you think about cancer, it can be such a difficult thing, but if you realize the importance of the relationships and the spiritual and emotional components of being human, that's really what it comes down to, is that there are people out there that need support and want support, and there are people that can provide that support. It's not even, easier or natural often to really delve into the spiritual and emotional aspects of being human, but faced with crisis, that door opens, and it's a matter of walking through.
Yeah. So many people, and logically so, when they're facing a cancer diagnosis, it's just really about the treatment. It's about getting well. But I think one of the things that we really aim to do is raise awareness about the wholeness of the cancer experience. And that's something that you really understand and have taught me as well, that it's a physical experience, a mental, emotional, a spiritual experience. And so CanCare really is part of the whole cancer care team and providing for that, emotional side of the cancer journey. And I don't know that a lot of people are really aware of the need within even themselves as they're facing cancer for that.
It's so important, just the physical side, the treatment, and the doctors, of course, that is ultimately where cures can be found. But healing isn't necessarily always a cure. Healing really starts with making a commitment to fight and become a survivor.
Yeah, no, that's great words of wisdom. So for our listeners today, if there was a particular message of hope that you would want to give to them, maybe there's someone listening here today who has recently heard those words, "You have cancer." What message would you like to give to them today?
There's a thing in our training that I've held on to that always comes back to me. It's a concept called realistic optimism. And it's really a mindset about it's not foolish optimism. It's being realistic about the possibilities, and through that mindset, setting a course in life and with dealing and how you're going to deal with cancer. And that's really where hope starts in so many ways. If you define hope as a commitment to the future, it really very often begins with a view on realistic optimism about what that future could be. So finding realistic optimism through conversation with a survivor is really where the hope comes from through CanCare.
Absolutely. Being able to see someone who has gone through what you're going through and is on the other side of it with a different perspective is a kind of hope that nothing else can provide. Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to someone who might be on the other side of their cancer journey and, might have been touched today by, what could I do? How could I give back and provide hope to someone?
Yeah. What would I say? I'd say do it. Sign up. Get on board with CanCare.
What do you have to lose?
Yeah. And truly, whether it's as a volunteer, as a donor, or, if you have friends that are facing cancer, as a referral to them of what support could be for them. It's just such a wonderful mission that becoming a part of it is life-changing in whatever way that you engage with CanCare. I mean, it's a great mission and great people involved with it. So yeah, just do it.
Just do it. All right. Taking a cue from Nike. Just do it. Well, Val, I am so grateful that you found us. I'm so grateful that you have given back from your experience to impact so many lives. Those that you personally served as their mentor, but the thousands and thousands that you've impacted through your chairmanship and your service with our mission. So I just want to thank you for being my partner and for being such an inspiration and a visionary. And thank you that you've got CanCare in your heart and a mission and love to serve others.
Thanks so much, Darcie, and back at you on the appreciation.
Well, thank you for being on this episode with us. And I know it's been inspirational to everyone listening. And we hope that you'll continue to listen to each episode and find hope in the face of cancer.
Y'all join the CanCare family. It's life-changing.
Amen. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hope in the Face of Cancer, a survivor by your side. If you or someone you know is facing cancer or is supporting a loved one through their journey, we invite you to share this podcast. Thank you for your support in our efforts in the cancer community. No one should face cancer alone.